Hi, I'm shooting this video for public speaking, specifically how to help. I can use this another time for argumentation, but and political science for policy stuff creation. But this one is specifically how to help create an argument and create solutions for your public persuasion speech. And the reason why I do this is during the semester in class and lecture, when I'm talking to you, or we tried with Zoom meetings, I give examples on how you can just look around you and you can see where there might be problems or solutions or whatever that you want to do. Your best way to figure out how to persuade people is stuff that you either already know or have a connection to. And the reason why I'm doing this video today is because of what's going on right now with the protests and of course the police shooting. And it's unfortunate that I could have probably done this video for multiple years in a row, because this is something that keeps on going on, and not necessarily the amount of protests and what we're seeing across the nation, but of course with police brutality and these shootings and so forth. I'm actually shooting today. I'm outside. I usually do this at home because I try to contain the environment, but I decided to shoot today in the campus of one of the places I graduated from, Cal State LA, because this last night was shut down, technically. I don't know if it was or not, but last night LA, all of Los Angeles, was under curfew and is now considered an emergency type situation, even including places here on the border of Los Angeles, because right on the other side is Alhambra, where I live. It is generalized with everywhere else, and I just wanted to point that out at the beginning, because generalizations is the root of a lot of the problems we're seeing with police brutality and so forth. So anyways, and make sure you don't generalize in your speeches. You got to be specific. You got to give examples. I always give a COVID-19 coronavirus tip. If you're out protesting or any kind of rally type situation or hanging out with friends, don't talk to your grandparents. Don't see your grandparents for 2 weeks. We are still in the middle of a pandemic where you are possibly contagious when you go to these large events. Always wear your mask. I actually two masks. I have one. It's right there. But always wear your mask. Okay. So what are we talking about today? What are we gonna do? This is a bonus video, meaning it's extra credit. If you watch this and answer the discussion question, it's 5 extra credit points. I wasn't going to do this video. I was going to talk about these issues during Zoom class and so forth. But I decided to create this because of what's going on and so forth. One of the things that you have to do in your speech is diagnose a problem. And you can diagnose the problem of things that we already know. There is years and years. By the way, your topic's still the same. It's still about coronavirus, but I'm using this topic because it's so raw. It is so in our face right now. I mean, you would think the pandemic and everything is going on, but obviously this one. So having something that we can directly see and how you can come up with problems and solutions for speeches. I give a real world example. I was mentioning the other day, so going over problems, it's obvious. Problems are obvious. When you're looking at coronavirus, you talk about shutdowns. This is the other reason why I did live videos, in case stuff like that happens. You talk about lockdowns, you talk about the infected and so forth. These are obvious problems. If you're doing a speech on this current situation, you would talk about the obvious problems. Police brutality. You would talk about racism in the system. You would talk about poor coordination or handling of the protests. You would talk about obvious things, but sometimes talking about non-obvious things. So the other day I was on Twitter, and don't worry, I didn't do anything because no one ever follows me, but I mentioned something that I think needed to be stated, which is in relation to the coronavirus pandemic, the U.S. African American population has suffered greatly And this is also built, not just the police brutality and more deaths, but also the fact that just how much can a community take. And so I pointed out that when it comes to government help with small business loans, African American community was disproportionately neglected. Talked about how unemployment numbers hit them the hardest, and also because of the economic structure and the fact that what we're doing, the African American population is the one you see mostly as essential workers on the front lines and all these different types of things, not getting increased pay, low wages. Talked about lots of different issues that are affecting the African American community and communities of color by and large. But there's another thing I also mentioned. When it was widely reported that the African American community was greatly affected by the infection of coronavirus, that's when white politicians and activists decided to try to reopen unsafely and did everything possible to make it as unsafe as humanly possible. And that's a thing where you have a problem where we see every day the police brutality, the shootings, the killings, and so forth. And then you add in stuff that can also, so main point one, you talk about the obvious. Main point two, other things that build. So, and you can do the same thing for your coronavirus speech. The other thing is solutions. And this is mostly what this video is going to be about, how to find solutions. When I worked in politics, when I got started in politics, is because the area I grew up in had all this horrible stuff. It was a transitioning neighborhood. And I just looked around and said, what can we do better? And I was a smart kid, a little bit too smart for my own good. But, you know, I would hear politicians and people, local politicians, saying things that we have to do, and I'm like, they're completely wrong. They stereotype not only my neighborhood, but my friends. And so if I point out one part of politics, the reason I got into politics is because of what I saw around me. And that's what you can do for your own solutions. I'm not going to make suggestions. This semester is my first semester I didn't have one white student, which is fine. If you know me, if you know where I grew up, if you know, it's nothing that I'm pointing out, but I'm pointing out because I always talk about community and knowing about what affects you directly. So I have predominantly African American and Latinx students this semester. And actually, I didn't have that many Asian American students either. And so I can't speak for you. I can't talk about community and protest and police brutality affecting you because I can't. As a white male, I can't. And we have people yelling behind me. But it is something to be aware of. And so I'm going to talk about these issues from my perspective as a white male, and you can kind of see and reflect upon where it is. Now, you can be an outside observer. So an example, an outside observer. When it comes to the protest that are affecting community, as a white male, I can't be judgmental about the ferocity or the what's going on. All I could do is, in context as an observer, it's just some things you should know. Like, for example, blocking freeways and blocking roads tends to hurt the middle class and working poor. This is studies and research have shown that, larger examples of that, and be aware of that. Stopping people from going to work, stopping people from picking up their kids, stuff of that nature. Be aware of that, especially freeway closures. Be aware of, don't give police, you know, I have talked for years in inner city schools about how to talk to police officers, and don't give them anything. It's not about respect, it's about just don't give them any kind of stuff that they use against you. We're seeing all these horrible videos, and just be aware of that. And also, not necessarily it's right what they're doing, but I'm just saying on the smaller stuff. You understand, on the smaller stuff. Don't give them stuff that they can use against you. And always be aware, this is someone who comes from a neighborhood that when we moved into, it was transitioning, when we moved into that neighborhood, it was transitioning from middle class to working poor and so forth. And we started out with 2 grocery stores in our neighborhood, and by the time my family left that area fully, there was none. And the reason why I bring that up is if you hit stores that are the only store in that area, then you are essentially turning a community into a food desert where they don't have the resources, they don't have the ability to do that. So just be aware of those kinds of things, and so forth. But that's an observer kind of thing. When you're an outsider and you're observing, you can't dictate, you can't say, oh, I know for the people. You can't. So I got to speak for my people. I got to speak for my people, and so forth. So here's a couple things as my perspective on, as a white male, and other things on this. First off, I'm a teacher, and I'm a union member in so many different unions, and I'm a strong union advocate. But I've been very judgmental, and I believe in reforms as well. So as a union member, I can safely say, police unions, you need to stop your crap. You need to stop lambasting and scapegoating and attacking the people that were involved in the police brutality, the victims. You call them suspects. You need to stop being overly aggressive about defending these cops and doing everything possible to get them off, when in reality you need to make the rules where once they've done a crime, a serious crime as murder, and have been accused of it, they need to get out of your protection and into the regular criminal justice system. You need to stop endorsing candidates that help your budget and help your thinking, because these anti-union candidates are also helping create the system and really affect the system more. So as a union member, stop backing anti-union, anti-progressive candidates, stuff like that. See, this is how you can reflect upon and come up with solutions. And it's time for my union and other unions start pressuring unions to do the right thing. As an instructor, as a teacher, we need to do better to not only portray other aspects of our society and so forth, and I tried, to do that not only because as an instructor, but from where I'm from. But we also need to do things that help students, especially in underserved communities, because it's that build-up. So, as an adjunct professor, we need to stop letting adjuncts teach an excessive amount of courses. We need to start helping with diversity hiring by creating more opportunities, lower class sizes. This is not necessarily about police brutality, but about build-up and the separation of societies. And the thing, it adds to the overall tension. As directly in relation to the police brutality and the protests and so forth, as a white American, you need to stop. You need to stop. If you are a leftist activist and you're a white guy or a gal, that's not your job. You're there to support and be an ally. You're not there to break windows and instigate and agitate and so forth. And we're seeing these videos. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is like we've seen in videos where they act as a barrier, use their privilege. Hello, woman in the red dress. I see you. You need to use your privilege in that way. You need to inform and so forth. You don't need to be the instigator. This is not your show. Stop it. And for the far right extremists that are coming in and doing those things, I can't speak to you. I'm probably not going to change your mind. But I'll tell you this. We need to get you caught. We need to put you on tape. We need to find out who you are, and we need to provide the things. And it's up to police to go after those folks who are purposely coming in, white Americans purposely coming in to create these problems. And we've seen it with the AutoZone break-in. We've seen it with the Oakland. We see it with Salt Lake City and all these different places. Let's see, what else can we do? Stop being a judgmental pricks online about the situation. Realize that as a white American, we don't have a full understanding of what's going on. I talk about where I'm from and what my friends had to go through, but I never had to go what they do. So you need to just stop that kind of stuff. You can talk about violence and those types of things, but when you generalize, you become part of the problem. Because, you know, in large scale with the police brutality, and I talk about this not as somebody who has worked with police before or as a citizen, but as somebody who served in the Marine Corps and the reserves, who served with law enforcement. I know you can do better. We need to speak out about going after bad cops. You know, I talked a little bit about the unions. We need to talk about creating laws that go after that, and review boards and outside investigations. We need to talk about, especially white Americans, because it's our responsibility to, you know, you want to be judgmental, but we need to judge ourselves first. You need to talk about, you need to talk, go after the police that way. We talk about, oh, there's good cops and so forth, but the good cops are protecting. You know, they're not coming up and standing up like they should. And they know the institutional problems that are plaguing them. And they go, oh, we got the one wrong, but they need to be forceful with their unions and those stuff as well. We need to go after politicians. As a California Democrat and someone who worked in the party, I saw firsthand how after Kathleen Brown lost the race for governor, the Democrats went into the, oh, I'm strong on crime stuff approach too, and that thing spread across the United States, and fearful of losing voters by being honest about military. You know, we need to stop militarization of our police force, and also decriminalize some things and go after it a different way. But we're finally seeing that, but we need to take responsibility for the fact that we were part of that buildup, where we led to that. As a white male, I need to be, you know, check my own family, check my own friends, check my own self. It's about responsibility, and that's the thing. I'm a little bit old school on this stuff. It's not because of where I'm from, but it's that military background where it's like we have a more effective, efficient way of doing things. And so I think I went over everything I wanted to talk to you about possibility. There's a lot more that we can do. But I wanted to give my students an example of how, when you're reflecting on an issue that you, especially that affects your community a lot, or is caused by your community, you need to come up with solutions. And you can come up with ideas of how to fix it by saying, how can it be better for me? How can it be better for us? Lastly, I want to end with a thing in general about what's going on with the protests and so forth. There was a tragic shooting, 2016, with the Dallas protests, with the mass shooter coming in, and a lot of lives were lost, and a horrible, tragic situation. But there was another thing that occurred that day, and we've forgotten about it, and it was an extension of that madman's tragedy. Is before that shooting occurred, talking about doing it better, the police force and the police chief went out of their way to make a collaboration, protest leaders and protests. And before the shooting, you saw video and pictures from the protests, and they're hard to find because the shooting has overtaken the narrative of that event. But they were not wearing riot gear. They were part of the protest. It was a part of a chance to come together, and we're seeing that right now. With the Flint sheriff and with the Santa Cruz cops and other police that are doing that, and protesters that are coming in and sharing these moments. And the reason why I bring this up, there's people behind me downstairs, is that I know we can do better, and we have seen it. And what we're seeing right now, I'll be honest, as a white male, is an extension of the police brutality that is going on. And I know we can do better because we have done better. We're doing better in some places right now, and we have done better places. So use the Dallas example before the tragic shooting, what they did. Use the Flint, Michigan sheriff example, Santa Cruz. Use those examples. That's what we're doing. Mayors, as someone who worked with politicians, mayors should automatically give, in this situation, give a parade route, a large park, whatever it takes to give accommodation to the frustration we were feeling. Because when you try to bottle it up, when you're trying to squeeze it tight, all you're doing is making it explode larger, and we have to take responsibility for that. See how this works? You have a problem, you come up with what you're observing and what you're experiencing, and you come up with possible solutions for your speech. Your discussion question. You know your speech is about coronavirus, but in light of this thing, replies will be hidden until you say, come up with solutions. Be appropriate. I know there's a lot of anger and hatred, and rightfully so, and disappointment and disgust. But make sure you're appropriate in the comments and come up with things that we can do better. It's not, remember I talked about solutions not being impractical. I mean, you can't abolish police, but you can talk about reforms or putting politicians to task, or things of that nature. All right, so answer what solutions you would do to the current problems that we're seeing, and I'll make sure to read all of them, and it's 5 extra credit points. All right, have a good day, stay safe, and always remember we're still in a pandemic as well. All right.